Sometimes it only takes one night to realize that the place you called home was never really yours. My mother-in-law never understood that I was the one paying for everything in that house. For 15 years, I handled every expense quietly: bills, renovations, lifestyle, without ever asking for recognition. Then one day, I returned from a trip, and everything changed. The locks were replaced. I was told not to come back. I didn't argue. I moved into a new apartment and stopped paying for anything. That's when panic set in and the phone finally rang. What happened next? Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. It was 11:51 p.m. when the Uber drove away, leaving me alone in the thick, humid darkness of the driveway. I stood there for a moment, exhausted from a 10-hour flight, my shoulders heavy, my hand gripping a small carry-on bag. All I wanted was to walk inside, take a shower, and sleep. I walked up to the large oak double doors, the same doors I had spent $20,000 restoring just last year. I reached out, entered my code into the smart lock, and waited. Nothing. A red light flashed. Access denied. I frowned and tried again, slower this time, carefully pressing each number. Then the message appeared: user Jennifer deleted. That's when something inside me shifted. I looked down. Lined neatly along the edge of the porch were 6 black trash bags, lit harshly by the motion sensor light above. They were packed so tightly that the plastic stretched thin, almost turning white at the seams. And taped to the door, right at eye level, was a piece of lined paper, Elizabeth's handwriting, sharp, uneven, and cold. We need the space for productive family members. Go back to your parents. I didn't scream. I didn't bang on the door. I didn't break down. I just stood there for exactly 10 seconds, processing everything like it was a system failure I needed to diagnose. Then I stepped forward and opened one of the bags. Inside were my clothes, mixed carelessly with my daughter Ashley's stuffed animals, and my expensive architectural books, all tossed together like trash. But something important was missing. My workstation. My servers. The tools that actually paid for everything they were living off. I slowly lifted my head and looked toward the detached garage about 50 yards away. The side door was slightly open. I walked across the yard, the sound of gravel crunching loudly under my heels in the silence of the night. Inside, in the dim and dusty space, they had dumped everything that mattered. My 3-monitor setup was stacked on top of old tires, unstable and ready to fall. My server tower, holding years of client data, sat directly on the oil-stained floor. And taped to one of the monitors was another note, this one in Jessica's bubbly, almost childish handwriting: $200 a month. Pay or we trash it. Venmo below. I stared at it. And in that moment, something inside me went completely still. The anger wasn't hot. It wasn't emotional. It was cold. Sharp. Controlled. Like absolute zero. Panic had no place here. I had trained myself out of that years ago. This wasn't a tragedy. This was a problem. And I knew exactly how to fix it. I carefully gathered my servers and monitors, carrying them piece by piece back to the rental car I had already ordered. While walking down the driveway earlier, every movement was precise, calm, almost mechanical, like cleaning up after a disaster. My daughter Ashley was safe at my parents' house for the weekend. Thank God she didn't have to see this. Once everything was loaded, I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I didn't start the engine yet. My phone buzzed in my lap, a notification. American Express, transaction approved. The Prime Cut Steakhouse, $840. I checked the time. Midnight. They were celebrating. They had thrown me out, packed my life into trash bags, and now they were raising glasses over expensive steak and wine paid for by me. My pulse didn't change. Hysteria is inefficient. For 15 years, I treated them like family. They treated me like a resource. And resources can be cut off. I opened my banking app. The blue glow of the screen lit up the dark interior of the car. Credit card section. Report lost or stolen. Confirmed. Next joint checking account. Transfer funds. I moved every single dollar I had earned into my private account. Freeze account. Confirmed. The loading circle spun for a moment. Then a green checkmark appeared. Done. I placed the phone down and finally started the car. As I backed out of the driveway, I didn't look at the house. I didn't look at the trash bags. And for the first time in years, my chest felt light. They wanted me gone. Fine. But they forgot one important detail. You don't evict the landlord and expect the lights to stay on. I checked us into a suite at the Marriott downtown. Ashley fell asleep almost instantly, curled up on the bed, still wearing her jeans. She was 13, old enough to sense something was wrong, but still young enough to trust that I would fix it. I sat by the window, looking out at the city lights, my laptop open in front of me. I wasn't searching for a divorce lawyer. I opened a spreadsheet hidden inside a password-protected folder labeled recipes to Elizabeth and Jessica. I was just Jennifer, the woman who sat in the attic playing on her computer. They thought I was barely making ends meet. Lucky to have married Michael, the brilliant venture capitalist. That was the story we let them believe. The truth was sitting right in front of me. Michael hadn't closed a deal in 4 years. He hadn't held a real job in 3. His firm was just a website I built, and a mountain of debt he tried to hide. Me? I was a senior digital architect for a global infrastructure firm. I didn't just play on a computer, I built systems for Fortune 500 companies. My base salary was $320,000 a year, and for 15 years, I had been the invisible backbone of that family too. I scrolled through the numbers. House renovations paid by me, Ashley's school tuition paid by me, Jessica's parties, her lifestyle. Every bottle of champagne paid by me. People always ask why I stayed, why I allowed myself to be treated like a burden when I was the provider. It doesn't happen overnight. It's slow, gradual. At first, I helped out of love. Then it became expected, then it became invisible. Eventually, they stopped seeing who I really was, and I let them. Michael believed his own illusion. He convinced himself and everyone else that he was the source of everything, and I was just the extra weight. I had supported their fantasy for so long. They truly believed I was the problem. I closed the laptop. The reflection staring back at me wasn't weak. It wasn't broken. It was someone who had finally stopped paying. They thought they removed a burden. They had no idea they had just cut off their life support. And, unlike a company, I wasn't sending a warning. I had already pulled the plug. The next morning, the city was bright and alive. But on my phone, a completely different story was unfolding. I sat in the hotel restaurant, sipping black coffee, watching the notifications roll in. I didn't feel hurt. I felt curious, like I was observing an experiment fail in real time. Jessica had posted a TikTok, finally clearing out negative energy. I pressed play. There she was, standing in my office, the attic space I had built, soundproofed and wired with high-speed fiber at my own expense. We're reclaiming this room, she said cheerfully. The camera turned. My blueprints, my work were being crushed and shoved into trash bags by Elizabeth. Out with the toxic, in with love. Jessica laughed. I watched it 3 times. Not because it hurt, because it amazed me. They weren't just removing me, they were rewriting reality. 10 minutes later, a message from Elizabeth appeared. Send me the utility login, the internet is slow, and Michael has important VC calls. Don't be petty. I almost laughed. Michael's important calls. He hadn't had one since 2021, but Elizabeth needed to believe it. So she protected the lie. Then came Michael's voicemail. I listened to his voice, smooth, confident, completely detached from reality. Jen, look, Mom is really upset. You caused a huge scene last night leaving like that. It was embarrassing, but we talked and we're willing to be reasonable. If you come back today and apologize to Mom and Jessica, we can discuss letting you sleep in the guest room for a few weeks, just until you find a job or get back on your feet. We aren't monsters. Call me. I lowered the phone. They truly thought they held all the cards. They thought I was destitute, terrified, and homeless. They were offering me the guest room in my own house as an act of charity, conditional on my submission. They thought they were negotiating. They didn't realize they were talking to the executioner. I didn't reply to the text. I didn't call Michael back. I didn't comment on the TikTok. I finished my coffee, wiped my mouth with the linen napkin, and opened my laptop. It was time to stop observing and start deleting. I spent the next 4 hours turning that hotel suite into a war room. I didn't pace the floor and I didn't call my mother to cry. I sat at the glass desk, my posture perfect, treating the end of my marriage exactly like I treated a failing corporate infrastructure project. Identify the liabilities, isolate the assets, and terminate the connection. First, I hired the team. I found a forensic accountant named Robert who specialized in hidden marital assets, and a divorce attorney whose reviews described her as terrifying. I paid their retainers upfront using the funds I had secured the night before. I gave them a simple instruction: go scorched earth, find every dollar he hid. But legal proceedings take time, and I wasn't in the mood to wait for a court date. I wanted immediate, tangible results. I wanted to see the structure crumble. I poured myself a glass of Pen Noir from the mini bar and opened a new browser window. This wasn't revenge. It was administrative maintenance. I started with Michael's pride and joy, the Range Rover. He drove it like he owned it, parking at valet at the club to show off to his non-existent investors, but he didn't own it. The lease was in my name because his credit score was in the double digits. I logged into the leasing portal. Request voluntary repossession. Location for pickup, 123 Highland Estate Drive. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. I smiled, imagining the tow truck pulling up just as he was getting ready for his fake workday. Next was the lifeline. My sister-in-law, Jessica, didn't have a job. She had an Audience, her entire self-worth was funneled through a data plan that cost me $300 a month. I logged into the carrier account. I saw the data usage spikes, TikTok, Instagram. Live streaming the painting of my office. Select line. Jessica action suspend service. Reason device theft. Technically, she hadn't stolen the phone, but she had stolen 15 years of my patience, so we called it even. Then I went for Elizabeth's throat. Or rather her social standing. The country club membership was the only reason she still had friends. It was entirely in my name, membership status. Cancel immediately. Reason, non-payment. I didn't just cancel it. I flagged the card on file as invalid. So the automatic renewal would bounce publicly at the front desk the next time. She tried to order a Genonic. Finally, the kill switch. I navigated to the utility company's dashboard. The electric bill was substantial for a drafty historic estate averaging $600 a month. It was entirely in my name. Service request stop. Service effective date today. I clicked submit. The screen flashed green. Request processed. I took a sip of wine. I closed my eyes and visualized the invisible signals traveling through the fiber optic cables I had installed. In a few hours, the lights would flicker, the internet would die. The screens would go black, the house would plunge into a darkness that matched their bank accounts. I didn't throw a vase against the wall. I didn't slash tires. I simply stopped paying the subscription fee for a life that no longer served me. My forensic accountant, Robert, called me at 4 in the afternoon. His voice was different this time. Earlier, he had sounded professional, like a man looking for hidden receipts. Now, he sounded grave, like a man looking at a felony. Jennifer, he said, skipping the pleasantries, I need you to look at the document I just emailed you. Page 4. I opened the PDF on my laptop. It was a loan document from a private lender. A second mortgage on the historic estate I didn't authorize. This, I said, my eyes scanning the numbers. The house is in Elizabeth's name. I just paid the primary mortgage. Keep reading, Robert said. Look at the cosigner. I scrolled down. There at the bottom of the page was my signature. It was a decent forgery. But the loop on the J was too wide, and right next to it was a copy of my last 3 tax returns documents I kept in a locked safe in my office. He used your credit rating and your income to secure a $300,000 loan against his mother's house. Robert explained, but here is the kicker. Look at the disbursement account. The funds hadn't gone to house repairs. They had gone to an offshore sports betting site and a crypto wallet that was currently worth less than $5. This is fraud, I stated. Flatly, identity theft, bank fraud. It gets worse, Robert interrupted. I cross-referenced this with the family loans Michael mentioned in his emails. I found a withdrawal from Elizabeth's teacher retirement fund, $50,000 taken out 6 months ago. I frowned. Elizabeth is stingy. She would never give him that kind of money unless she thought it was a guaranteed investment. She didn't give it to him, Robert said, his voice dropping an octave. I found an email chain. Michael told his mother that you were in legal trouble. He told her you needed $50,000 to settle a lawsuit or you'd go to jail, and that you had a massive inheritance coming from a distant aunt that would pay her back double. I sat back in my chair, the air leaving my lungs. The pieces finally snapped into place. The resentment, the parasite comments, the entitlement. Michael hadn't just been a leech. He had been a conductor. He had played a symphony of lies. He told me his mother was demanding and needy, so I would pay the bills to keep the peace. He told his mother I was a secret reckless spender waiting on an inheritance, so she would loan him money to save me. He had stolen from his mother and blamed it on his wife. He had stolen from his wife to fund the lifestyle that kept his mother quiet. He had defrauded the 2 women who loved him, pitting us against each other to hide the fact that he was the only villain in the room. Jennifer. Robert asked, what do you want to do? This isn't civil court anymore. This is prison time. I looked at the forged signature on the screen. I thought about the trash bags on the porch. I thought about Elizabeth calling me a parasite while her son drained her life savings in my name. Print it all, I said. Print every single page. I'm going to pay them a visit. I hung up. I wasn't just the architect of my own life anymore. I was holding the blueprints to their destruction. The house was a black void against the night sky. I had instructed the utility company to execute the shut-off at 5 p.m. and they were punctual. I parked my rental car at the bottom of the driveway, leaving the headlights on to cut a beam through the darkness. I wasn't hiding anymore. I walked through the unlocked front door. The smart locks were dead without power and followed the flicker of candlelight to the kitchen. They were all there, Elizabeth, Jessica, and Michael, huddled around the marble island I had paid for, surrounded by expensive emergency candles. When I walked in, the atmosphere shifted from panic to pure concentrated venom. You, Elizabeth shrieked, her voice cracking, you ungrateful, spiteful little leech, how dare you? Cut the power? Michael has been on the phone for hours trying to fix your mess. Michael stepped forward, trying to loom over me in the dim light. He looked exhausted, his shirt unbuttoned. Sweating in the humidity of a house with no AC. You've made your point. Jen, turning off the lights, canceling the cards. It's childish. Turn it back on. Apologize to my mother and maybe we won't see you for abandonment. I didn't answer him. I walked past him to the pantry where my backup server drives were stored. I grabbed the hard case. Put that down, Jessica yelled. That belongs to the house. I turned to face them. I placed the case on the counter with a heavy thud. You keep using that word, I said, my voice calm, echoing slightly in the high-ceiling room. Parasite, you called me that in your note. You called me that in your text messages. Because that's what you are, Elizabeth spat, living here rent-free. Dragging my son down while he tries to build an empire. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and cold. It is fascinating, I said, looking at Elizabeth. Psychologists call it projection. You accuse me of the very thing you are because deep down you know the truth. A parasite feeds on a host. A parasite takes nutrients and gives nothing back. A host sustains the life of the organism. I pointed to the Sub-Zero refrigerator. I bought that $11,000. I pointed to the ceiling. I paid for the roof replacement last year, $24,000. I pointed to the car keys on the counter. I paid the lease every single month. I looked Michael dead in the eyes. I am the host. You are the infection, and tonight, I am curing myself. Michael lunged forward. Shut up, she's lying, Mom, she's hysterical, am I? I reached into my bag and pulled out the stack of papers Robert had printed. I slammed them onto the marble island next to the candles. Elizabeth, you asked where your $50,000 went. The money you loaned Michael to keep me out of jail? Elizabeth froze. Her eyes darted from me to Michael. Michael's face went pale in the candlelight. He didn't give it to me, I said, sliding the bank transfer record toward her. He sent it to a betting site in Antigua. And when that wasn't enough, he forged your signature to take out a second mortgage on this house. You aren't just sitting in the dark, Elizabeth, you are sitting in a foreclosed home. The silence that followed was heavier than the darkness. Elizabeth picked up the paper. Her hands were trembling so hard the candle flame flickered wildly. She looked at the numbers. She looked at the forged signature. Then she looked at her son, Michael. She whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. Mom, I can explain, Michael stammered, backing away. It was an investment. I was going to double it. You stole from me. Elizabeth's voice rose to a scream. You stole my retirement. You stole my house. She lunged at him, clawing at his chest. Jessica started screaming. The alliance of the parasites had shattered the moment the food source was revealed. I picked up my server drives. I didn't stay to watch the implosion. I didn't need to. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them screaming in the dark, illuminated only by the dying light of their own candles. It has been 6 months since I walked out of that dark kitchen today. The morning sun is streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new apartment. It is a modern open-concept space downtown, no crumbling historic walls, no drafty hallways. And no hidden debts. My daughter Ashley is in her room actually laughing on a video call with her friends, unburdened by the tension that used to suffocate our home. I sat down at my desk with my morning coffee and opened the local real estate listings. There it was, 1, 2, 3 Highland Estate Drive, bank-owned, foreclosure auction pending. The family legacy Elizabeth fought so hard to protect is now just an asset on a bank's balance sheet. As for the family itself, the dissolution was absolute. When the forensic audit proved Michael had stolen his mother's retirement funds, Elizabeth didn't just evict him, she turned state's witness. Michael is currently out on bail living in a motel, awaiting trial for 3 counts of wire fraud and identity theft. Elizabeth is in a small 1-bedroom rental relying on Social Security. I closed the browser tab. I didn't feel a surge of victory. I didn't feel pity either. I just felt the quiet satisfaction of a balanced equation. I opened my spreadsheet one last time, the one hidden in the recipes folder. I scrolled to the column marked Family Support. For 15 years, that column had been a bleeding wound of thousands of dollars a month, mortgages, cars, tuition, club fees, egos. Today, the cell read 0. I highlighted the entire file. Right-click, delete. I learned a lesson that cost me $500,000, but it was worth every cent to finally understand it. You cannot buy respect. The moment you have to pay to be tolerated, you are not a family member. You are a customer, and the service was terrible. I closed my laptop. The silence in the apartment wasn't heavy, it was expensive, it was peaceful. And best of all, it was entirely mine. If you have ever felt like the invisible backbone of your family, share this story. You are not a bank and you are not a doormat, you are the architect of your own.